This is Kim Hargrave. I'm the Education Director here at the Denison Pequotsepos Nature Center, and today we're going to be talking about eastern screech owls. And to help me out, I've got my friend Milo right here, and Milo is one of 3 eastern screech owls that lives here at the Pequotsepos Nature Center. Now, Milo lives with us because he has a wing injury. Unfortunately, Milo was hit by a car about 5 years ago, and it hurt his wing, so his wing on this side is not quite where it needs to be in order to fly, and so he has a permanent home with us here at the Nature Center. Now, as I said, Milo is an eastern screech owl, and eastern screech owls are found on the entire eastern half of the United States. Anywhere there are trees, you can find eastern screech owls. However, if you go across the Rocky Mountains, you're out in California or in New Mexico, you won't find the eastern screech owl out there. You're going to find the western screech owl. All right, so Milo, like I said, we've had him for about 5 years, but I don't actually know how old he is because he was an adult when he came to the Nature Center. And we kind of make some assumptions about age when we get our birds in. Most of the time, the birds that we get here at the Nature Center, when they're hurt, they're younger. And that's because they're less experienced and have a little more trouble finding food and hunting on their own. And so they're more likely to get hurt. So my guess is that Milo is probably less than 10 years old. In captivity, we hope for our screech owls to live up to 15 years. And in the wild, they live a little bit younger than that, usually closer to 10 years or so out in the wild. Now, this owl right here is a gray screech owl. Screech owls actually come in 3 different colors. They can be reddish color, they can be brown, or they can be gray. So if you think you've seen a screech owl, but it was a slightly different color, it probably was. It was just that they come in these 3 different colors. Along the eastern half of the United States, we're more likely to see the reddish color. If you go further inland towards like the Mississippi River, you're less likely to see the reddish color of the eastern screech owl.
Kim, we have a question from Amy Watts who would like to know what are some differences between the eastern and western screech owls?
So actually they are fairly similar looking owls. Their calls are slightly different. Obviously where they live can be a little bit different as well. So a western screech owl can actually be adapted to desert environments where the eastern screech owl cannot. And so diet and habitat tend to be the main differences, and their calls are a little bit different. But they're both smaller owls. Here in Connecticut, the eastern screech owl is the 2nd smallest owl that we have. The only owl that's smaller is the saw-whet owl right here. And I just have to tell you, because he's been showing off a lot, one of these amazing adaptations that owls have, which is they have twice as many bones in their neck as you and I can, so they can actually turn their head all the way around and a little bit further. And Milo's been doing that a lot today, so he's been turning that head all the way around for us to see. So it's kind of funny, sometimes you can see his belly and then the back of his head just like that. All right, let's see if we can get him to do it again. Nope. All right, but remember, even though he can turn it far, he can't spin his head in a circle. That doesn't work. All right. Yes, hi Milo. All right, and a few other things about the eastern screech owl. They might look small, they might look really cute, but they're actually pretty tough birds. I kind of consider them as mini great horned owls, and they have some similar features. One of those things that you see are those feather tufts right on top of his head right here. And those are not ears, they're not horns, just little feathers. Scientists really aren't sure why they have those feathers. There's a couple different guesses. One is to help with camouflage, and another is it can express, some people think it might express emotion of the bird. If it's alert, they tend to be higher up. Now, eastern screech owls are actually a very common owl here in Connecticut, but most people never see them, and that's because they're extremely nocturnal and they have amazing camouflage. Where sometimes our barred owls and our great horned owls, you might see them, early in the evening, starting to hunt, or first thing in the morning. These guys tend to wait to get up till really late at night. And the reason why they do that is to try to avoid great horned owls and barred owls who will actually prey upon them. So they tend to be sleeping all day long in tree cavities, which is a hole in a tree, or in nest boxes, or right up next to the trunk of the tree. So if you imagine my arm was the tree right here, he'd go right up to the side of it and had just amazing camouflage to blend right in. People who try to find screech owls, what they do is they actually go from tree to tree and they actually look up and try to spot them in there. And they can have pretty good luck doing that.
Kaylee and Abby would like to know, can they fly if they get wet?
You know what, they can fly pretty well if they're a little wet, but they can't. Like if they had to take a bath and then go fly, their feathers would be a little bit heavy and that would be troublesome for them. But if it's raining and they're flying through the forest, they're getting a few drops on them, they'll still be able to fly. However, just like most birds, they try to avoid getting wet. So if it's really heavy rain, they're going to go into their tree cavity, or they're going to go into their, hide underneath evergreens. And that gives them like a little umbrella, natural umbrella to stay dry.
We have another question from Christy and Max, who would like to know why they're called screech owls.
So I don't think they have a screechy sound, but I'm going to play the call for you, and the name is based off of their call. I think they sound like a horse. That's my personal opinion. Let me play the call for you though, and you can decide what you think. Now, ornithologists who study screech owls, instead of actually going out and trying to count screech owls because they can be so hard to find by actually looking at them, they go out and they play the calls and they try to get the screech owls to answer back because they're more likely to get an accurate representation of the number of screech owls that are around. Now, remember what I said, screech owls can live anywhere that there are trees. And that means you can find them in city parks, suburban areas like right in your neighborhood, or out in the woods. And what scientists have been discovering is these owls are actually more successful, which means they have more babies each year, if they are living in suburban environments. And that's because there's less predation on them. And unfortunately, still in our neighborhoods, we still have plenty of mice and plenty of food for them to eat. And so they're helping us out and doing pretty well. All right, so the one thing is you have to have the trees and you have to have a tree cavity for them to nest in. So that's always where they're going to nest, in a tree cavity. You can actually build a screech owl box to try to attract them to your house. And you can find lots of different plans for them online. So you've got some time right now. You can get some wood and build up a little screech owl box. Now, screech owls are already starting to nest. Usually they start to nest in late March, early April here in Connecticut. And screech owls mate for life. So they usually keep the same partner year after year, and usually the females will have between 2 and 6 eggs, and they sit on their eggs for about 30 days. And the male will continue to hunt, and he'll bring her food back. And then once the babies hatch, then the male will still do all the hunting and bring it back, and he'll hand a mouse to the female, and then she'll rip it up and feed all of the babies like that. All right. Now,
so we have someone that's requesting, Aaron would like to see him up close. So I'm going to try to get in close, but we are still observing social distancing, even though we're here. So I'm going to zoom in, guys, and hopefully it won't make anyone... Oh, we've turned the camera. Sorry. That's my hand. It's Cassandra here at the Nature Center. All right. So hopefully you can see him up close.
So when you're looking at it up close, this is a good chance to observe his eyes. Look how large his eyes are compared to the size of his face. And that's because screech owls, again, like I said, are very nocturnal. And being nocturnal means you need to be able to let in lots of light to your eyes. So that dark spot in the middle of his eyes are his pupils, and the darker it is, those pupils will open up. So right now you see a yellow ring around both of those, but if we turned off all the lights in here, those dark spots would actually fill up his whole eyes and let in any little glimpse of light that he could find, and so that he'd be able to go hunting. And what he'd be going hunting for are things like mice, worms, bats, songbirds. So remember, songbirds, they may not be awake during the night, but they're out there sleeping, and this guy can maybe find one. They'll even go and find things like frogs and crayfish to eat. So lots of different types of food our little screech owl eats. So in addition to hunting by eyesight, he'll also hunt by his sense of hearing. The flat area on his face is called his facial disc. and that actually helps to funnel sounds into his ears. His ears are two small openings underneath his eyes, right on the front of his face. And they tend to be asymmetrical, which means crooked. So there's one up here and one down there. And that actually helps him to pinpoint sounds. So he can tell whether the sound is coming from the left or the right or up and down for when they are hunting. Now, if you look close to his beak, you also will notice he's got modified feathers up there. And that also helps him when he's catching something to feel where it is. Now he catches his food with his sharp talons right here. They've got 4 talons on each feet. And you can see right now, he's got 2 in the front and 2 in the back. And that allows him to put even pressure down on the food that he's eating. So he'll catch things like mice and rats with those sharp talons and then carry them up and then tear them to pieces with their beak. Now, if they have a super successful night of hunting, like, there's a whole party of mice going on, and he manages to find it, he's going to take those mice and he'll actually get them and he'll store them for a couple days, and so he won't have to hunt as much, which can be a really successful strategy for these guys right here.
We have a question. Natalie would like to know how fast they can fly.
That's hard to say. They're not actually one of our quicker birds. From what I've seen and studied about these birds, it's hard to say what their miles per hour is, but they actually don't usually fly for super long distances. So if he wanted to go hunting, he'd be, let's say he was on my arm, and he would actually perch around for a little while to look to see where the prey is and then swoop down and get it. So he's not one of the faster birds that we have, but quick enough to try to get away from some of the predators that are out there. All right, so he's got that sharp curved hook beak to tear apart his food, just like all birds of prey do. So screech owls belong to the group called raptors, which includes hawks, eagles, owls, vultures, and falcons. All right, now one of the unique things about owls is once they eat their food, let's say he caught a mouse and he ate the mouse, he might eat, all of that mouse, and that means he's also eating its bones, all right, its tail, its heart, its brain, every piece of that mouse he's going to eat. And his stomach can't quite digest it the way other animals can. And so what'll happen is the bones and the fur get formed into a pellet, and he's going to cough that out. And tomorrow, if you join us tomorrow, we're going to talk all about owl pellets, and we'll get to take some apart and see what some of these different birds have been eating. So it's a really fascinating thing about owls. So if you've noticed, he's bobbing his head back around, and that's because he's listening. Inside here at the Nature Center, we have some other animals, and he's definitely noticing those different animals that are here with us.
So for Kim, we have a few people that have just... Can you recap Eastern Screech Owls and how old Milo is, and if Milo has a mate here at the Nature Center?
So Milo has 2 roommates that he lives with here at the Nature Center, and those are Willow and Otis. And when you go to the enclosure sometime, you're going to look in there and you're going to go, oh, all the screech owls must be out. But actually that's not true. It's because there are boxes and the tree cavity that we had in there. And so Milo, don't really know how old he is, but we're guessing he's about probably under 10 years old. We've had Milo for about 5 years due to a wing injury. But we can't really tell you exactly how old he a lot, but we don't really know whether Milo is a male or a female. It can be very tricky to tell male from female screech owls. Sometimes you go by size, and the females do tend to be heavier than the males, and Milo is fairly small and light, so that would be my guess that he's a male, but I can't guarantee that fact right there.
All right, and we have a question from Carolyn, who would like to know how long babies stay in the nest.
So the babies stay in the nest, so they're in their eggs for about 30 days, and then they tend to fledge after another 30 days. So think about that. Mom bird is in there with them for almost 60 days, kind of like us these days at home. All right. And so about 30 days, and then they start to fledge. And when they fledge, leaving the nest, and first they hop onto little branches, and they kind of hop around from branch to branch. And then they stay with their parents until the fall. So they don't usually really disperse until the fall season. So mom and dad screech owl tend to have one clutch or one group of babies per year. All right, so some birds will have multiple ones, but screech owls can only have one. Now, one of the things that you need to look out for screech owls is an invasive bird called the European starling. And European starlings can actually take over a screech owl nest. They'll go into the nesting box and kick the screech owls out. So if you have a nesting box, if you see any starlings around, you want to make sure you scare those starlings away to give your screech owls the best possible chance. Now, the screech owl will get even with the starlings. Every now and then it will eat one for dinner. So it does work out for the screech owls as well. All right, a few other really cool facts about this little screech owl. One is his feathers. His feathers allow him to have silent flight. And that silent flight is caused by two reasons. One is their feathers are incredibly soft. So if you think right down on a tile floor, it makes a big clap sound. But if you drop it down on your carpeting, it makes it quiet. And that's because soft things like carpeting tend to absorb sound. And that's how it works with owl feathers. The other part of the owl feather that makes it unique is if you look at the edge, you can actually see little bits of the feather hanging off the sides. And that actually breaks up the wind to make it a little bit quieter when it flies, as opposed to one of those stiff turkey feathers that have a nice smooth edge. And turkeys don't like to eat things that are like mice, grasshoppers, and crickets and things that aren't going to run away from them too much if they make noise. So this is another great adaptation that the screech owl has. With that silent flight, it allows it to sneak up on its prey, but it also allows it to be able to hear prey as well. Because if you're making a lot of noise, you can't hear what's going on around you. Well, if his feathers was making a lot of noise, he wouldn't be able to hear that mouse rustling in the leaves and things like that. So Milo is just an amazing little screech owl right here. I'm going to just help her out with her wing a little bit. And she's been really, really watching us today and seeing what we're up to.
All right. Any other questions from the world of Facebook before we tune out for today? All right. Looks like everyone's enjoying our time together. And we hope, again, that you can join us tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. As Kim said, we are going to be talking all about owl pellets, and we're actually going to dissect some. So that way we can do some distance learning all together during this interesting time. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you tomorrow morning at 10.
Bye-bye.